Hello, everyone. I thought I would try something fun. Uh, what I'm going to do in this video is I've identified a job description for a marketing position within multifamily. And this is an expired listing, so this isn't currently active. But I'm going to walk through it and I'm going to comment through it about the different elements of the job that they're looking for and provide a little bit of my experience, a little bit of my comments towards it, and just to give you a feel for where I've been in my journey as a marketing director in multifamily. And I hope you find this useful. I've been trying to put out content via some blogs, continuing that. And I thought this would be a really fun way to introduce some information if you're up and coming and trying to get a little bit better feel for what it's like to be a marketing director. So I'll tell you, marketing is my job, my profession. It's become my career, and it's also my hobby. It's just something I really enjoy. So if I'm reading a book, it's probably a marketing book. So I really love this stuff, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on each section of it, but you'll get a feel for just where I come from in regards to when I read through job descriptions and what I do and what I have done, I guess I should say, in relation to what's being asked for uh, based off one job description that I pulled from LinkedIn. All right, enjoy.
A seamless experience from digital to on-site interactions. It's kind of my bread and butter. So in the past, what I've done to assist with this with companies who didn't have this set up was the first thing I did was create a marketing library. That is a place where every property has a set of images that represent that property. Their taglines are there, their website copy is there, and everything that they would need that is unique to that property and really highlights their unique selling propositions the best is located there. That way, everyone's working from the same starting point. I've done things along the lines of creating consistencies with the look and the feel. So when you go to a property from a previous company of mine, you're going to see a Matterport tour there. That's part of the process. And so what we did to make that better and possible is we took Matterport tours of every property prior to me being there. So every property had one, but as time went on, those became outdated. And so what we did when I came in is we just created a process to make that camera jump around and make sure that every property had the opportunity to have updated Matterport tours on their website. So small examples, but just to give you a taste of what it is I'm doing. Processes are very important. I come into every situation and not just look at what could we do right here, but what can we try? And then as we're going through this, I'm always thinking, how can we scale this to make this something that we could do for everyone? And then, of course, cross-functional relationships are important to that. Don't put marketing in a funnel, in a vacuum that's separate from the rest of the company. Develop effective community marketing and advertising strategies in collaboration with property management teams, team leaders tailored to meet each community's occupancy needs, and it goes on. I work with regionals, I work with property managers and marketing teams to make sure we're all on the same page. I want my team to know that we are on the same page as the regional, who is on the same page as the property manager. Otherwise, we end up working against each other. I think the other half of that is important is that the marketing team is working in conjunction with the business goals for that property as well. So it really needs to be linear from top down. And that's been a strength of mine, is identifying that within organizations and saying, hey, we're talking about two different things here. Let's make sure we're all on the same page, and then we'll all work towards that goal together. I think that easily gets lost in the day-to-day. One thing I did story-wise, when I came on board, we initiated a series of calls with the marketing team for every new acquisition we took over. It was important to me that, one, we were all on the same page right from the beginning, but then two, everyone on site had a face to put with a name and not just an email address. So providing that kind of relationship from on-site to regional to the marketing team, and to make sure that was cohesive was important. You have on here include audience segmentation, messaging strategies, channel selection. This part's fun. So funnels and customer journey mapping all through their experience, both prospects and residents, is very important. If you don't have a clear laid out idea, then you can't take full advantage of audience segmentation. Like these things have to be laid out. So I'd recommend that. I'm sure this probably already exists, but for me, I make sure the marketing funnel is laid out. I have it on a piece of paper by my desk and say, okay, this is our funnel. And it kind of sounds like more of a cyclone. Like there's a way to get people in to the cyclone, and then you all include the resident experience to go along with it too, which is wise. When I break this down to talk about it, I tend to break them up into two separate: the customer experience and the prospect experience, even though it is all one life cycle. Lay out what that funnel is, and then every marketing initiative that we take on has to fit in that funnel somewhere. Otherwise, what's the purpose of it? Is it gathering attention? Is it moving people along the funnel? Is it something that's going to push people that are considering near the sale? So I think that's really important. I think that's easy to set up. And the process of just putting initiatives next to places on that funnel that they're primarily set to target is an easy thing to do, but it also makes that visible and transparent to everyone. So no one on the property team, no one in the regional office or the operations team is going to have to wonder, well, why are we doing this marketing thing? Well, it's right here. And some of that comes with some additional education too. And that's, by education, I mean just training, making sure everyone is on the same page with what we're doing. We know what the resources are that are available through the marketing department, and then making sure that we deliver on those. Stay abreast of marketing trends, economic conditions. Yeah, that's important. We in the past, I've cultivated marketing plans that were uniform in the sense that we made it specifically for the management company I was working for. But then we were able to break that down and say, okay, this is the information that this property kind of needs to fill out for us to know. This is the information for this property. And so it became a single source of communication. So in advance, over the next 12 months, we had an idea of what was coming that was public information or that anyone on our team knew about. And then that way we're all on the same page. Okay, we know in December we know in any month that there's a new property that's being built right now that's planning to start leasing probably by our best estimate then in that month. So what do we need to do in a couple months as they're boosting up their marketing to make sure that we're still getting the leads that we need to convert and make sure we're getting our apartment filled as well. So I think that's one example of something we've done, and that's a really easy, simple. I'll use the word simple. It's a simple thing to do. Inspire confidence among cross-functional stakeholders, bridging the gap between technical and non-technical audiences to effectively communicate ideation, strategy, execution, outcomes. My career is based on this. When you're marketing something, it's not the best products that often get bought. It's the products that customers understand the best. And I think the same is true for marketing teams. It's not how many cool things can you throw in. It's, does everyone understand the importance of these things? Is there buy-in from top, people above me, all the way down to the property level, and to the property level? And then does everyone on board with what those things are? Does everyone understand what they are? If we don't understand the resources that are available to us, we're not going to take advantage of those resources. I remember when I was a leasing and marketing manager, there was a program that we used that would help identify where people were living, and it was separate from our front-facing CRM. And so I didn't have a lot of experience in that, but I was in control of an area where I had to help place people who wanted to be moved. And I struggled with it for a long time. And the reason ended up being that I didn't understand. I was never trained on this other platform. I barely knew this other platform existed, but yet it was the base for where they could move to. And so that information all didn't feed into our CRM. So I understand that it's important to know what the tools are that are there for you so that you can actually take advantage and use those tools. And the same is true for marketing. Marketing can get very complicated very quickly, but to be able to simplify it down, make it relatable, and just be able to talk about it in a way where you're not trying to sound smart, you're trying to relay information. And I think that's can be a little bit of a catch for people in the marketing world. There's a desire to want to use all the terminology because it kind of shows amongst your peers that you know what you're talking about, but the practical application of that isn't always there. Filtered KPIs that affect leasing. I think those are important in bridging the gap, that everyone knows what the KPIs are that lead to the results we're all looking for. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to get leases, and leases come from leads. So how do we get those leads? What are the steps along the way that help us get those leads, and what are the things that are deterring people? And that's where the KPIs, the customer journey mapping, really come into play. And in order to make those happen, you need a good data activation process. That's my experience. I've had to build one everywhere I've went. I love doing it because there's a little bit of fun to it for me, because it's different with every set of systems that you use, but the concept is the same. To put it simply and not get too in the weeds in it, we have information coming from advertisers, we have information that we have in our property management software, and we have information in our CRM. And all those different things don't talk to each other. So we have to make them communicate in a way where we can start to see correlations between those metrics that people don't really understand, that come from whatever new advertising source we're doing. We need to make sure everyone, especially the marketing team, knows what those KPIs are, in which I'm confident they will. But then how does that relate to a lead coming? How does that relate to a website visitor? How does that relate to a lead? And how does that relate to a lease? So to be able to leverage that information, it takes a little bit of work in aggregating that. And it's really, it's very doable. You just have to have someone there to drive that forward. Leveraging expertise in marketing, signage, and wayfinding. Oh yeah. Curb appeal is always going to be one of those things that are important. I initiated a process at a previous company of mine where we were not involved in the due diligence process. When I say we, I mean marketing. And so as that team is going through, the DD team is going through, and they're saying, oh, this is about how much money we'll need in CapEx. This is about how much money we need for everything else. There was no money allocated to making sure that the property was easy to navigate and the property looked appealing in the terms of sales or leasing. So we initiated a process where we were involved in that process. We weren't traveling to the properties, but again, cross-functionally, we were working with that DD team to make sure that we were hitting the pain points of not having marketing dollars when it came time for the property to want them. We made sure that money was being allocated, and we knew what was being allocated to. It wasn't a general shot in the dark. Maybe we'll spend this much over here, because we'd actually walk the property with a video camera. Okay, this is where a sign needs to go. It needs to be about this size, and all the way in. Manage a diverse array of marketing channels, including SEO, PPC, ILS. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We have a lot of options available. One value that I've been able to bring to the companies that I've worked for is that there are more available opportunities than what people are using. So when you've been doing marketing for a bit, you know that there's a lot of tools and resources available to you. And the idea, though, is, okay, have we segmented our process enough where we know that there are the things that kind of get people's attention, there are the things that nurture people along the way, and there are the things that close deals. So oftentimes it's just lead generation, generally speaking, is the focus. And so we're like, okay, well, are we using all the ILSs that we could be? Well, no, we're not. Okay, well, we think it's hard to work with whatever. So in my past roles, I've added ILSs. I'm not the proponent that an ILS is the solution. I used to run my own Google Ads in-house for other companies. So understanding that process too is important. And just, I guess, understanding the ecosystem of how things work together, and that everything needs a place on that funnel in order to make sense that we're doing it. So we've had, like I mentioned earlier, the funnel yours looks like kind of more of like a cyclone, the whole life cycle. That kind of thing, it just eliminates the waste of what we can do in marketing. You can't do that if your tech stack or your advertising stack isn't set up and it's not structured. So you have to know that what everything is supposed to be doing, and then how to measure the metrics from there and compare those to leases. And that's creating those KPIs in between an impression and a lease. Generate innovative ideas for marketing events and initiatives. I'll just share a story. Yes, I mean, this is what another thing I'd refer to as the fun part of the job. We had a challenge that I had a property that was open to try whatever, but they needed leases, and they had a loose idea they wanted to do an event. And the challenge was to make that event as big as it could be, and they had a willingness, like I said, to try something different. So I worked with that regional manager and then the property manager, and we looked at a typical tour. And the idea that I brought was that a tour can sometimes raise the cortisol levels in prospects because they're wanting to ask questions. They think there's a little bit of a standoff. This person is trying to sell me something, so they're on alert. So I thought, well, what if we could create not cortisol, drop that, and create more dopamine spikes and hits throughout the course of the tour to give people something that was both interactive, that was engaging, that was fun. So I know that when you can increase those dopamine levels for short hits, it creates anticipation. One, people tend to be a little bit more relaxed in that environment, and it creates greater attention span. So what we ended up doing was a Willy Wonka theme giveaway. But what we did is we had certain elements that were unique selling propositions for that property that were set up along the tour route, and people knew to look for a certain emblem. And when they look for that emblem, they'd say, hey, there's one. And then that gave the leasing agent an opportunity to say what was on the back of that emblem, which was a selling point of the property. So it was more engaging than a typical tour. It almost turned it into more of a game. And that was the purpose of it, though. And they had a highly successful leasing event. We talked about it throughout the company as far as how well it went, and then it ended up being replicated. And a bonus tip, by the way, if you're having a food event, to always go with ice cream. If you have the opportunity, it's been studied to have the highest increase in mood levels affecting favorability. So if you're thinking like, what should we do for food? Should we do some food truck, whatever else? You could keep it pretty simple and just do some type of ice cream, especially if it's just before a sales presentation. Cultivating relationships with advertisers and marketing vendors. I had lunch the other day with a vendor who hasn't been my vendor in 3 years. And that comes from building a win-win relationship. I think the way that we treat everyone is paramount to how they're going to treat us and the respect that they give us. So I've had old vendors that I've had to hold vendors accountable who weren't really working in our best favor. In ours, I mean the management company's best favor. But at the same time, I've also had those same vendors that I had to hold accountable. I'm treating them the same way as I do the vendors who want to hit me up for lunch when happen to be in town, even though I'm not their vendor anymore. I have vendors who reach out to me and say, hey, is there anything going on? Can I help you? I was selected for the Zillow advisory board, and that wasn't because of anything particularly I was doing. It's just I treat my vendors the same way. I'm pretty transparent. When they say, what can I do to get your business? I love that transparency because I'll say, here's what I need. Here's what I'm expecting from you. And if you can do this, then we're going to be best friends because you're going to give me what I want. And in return, I'm going to give you what you want. I think that's it. It's not really, it's just trying to create those win-win situations. And I think we do that with a little transparency and just, this is what I really expect. So they don't have to guess. They can just deliver it for me. I think that's why I have those good vendor relationships. Collaborate cross-functionally, develop property branding and marketing strategies. For at least the last 5 years as a marketing director, this has been a key issue. I guess objective is a better word than issue. I've been selected to be on new development and acquisition teams. As a director, I think there's a sense that they want your voice, of course, but I make sure it's a smooth onboarding process for as smooth as it can be, identifying the needs, working with the property team, working with the lease up specialist, working with the regional specialist who's going to be there to like guide that process, and just anyone that's involved. I have a tendency to try to create a situation where I'm like, okay, here's what I have done that's been successful, and making sure everyone has that voice to say that, and then just listening and then filling in gaps, marketing gaps where it becomes prevalent that they need to be. Sometimes that means we add things we've never done before, and that's the gap I'm filling. Is that, well, okay, we've tried all these things. Has there been the success we wanted? Not necessarily. And then I'm able to go in and assess and say, well, we've never really made it as visual as we should be, which is one thing we did in creating 3D rendered walkthroughs for new developments. And so just things like that. So it comes down to making sure that I'm part of the process, that my team is part of the process in a way that is not trying to show how smart or how important they are, but more importantly, listening for where the value needs to be added and then filling in that value from We've done that with analytics. We did that with analytics in my last 2 roles on my team. So one thing we created was a marketing analytics dashboard, and it was literally 7 pages of, hey, here's everything you want to know about marketing in this market that we can provide from our resources. And that allows everyone to look at the information and then assess it with their knowledge and expertise. So that type of transparency is, and that listening ear is important, because we made that from listening. Digital marketing, analyze and distill data-driven insights. We're looking at a lifecycle marketing, meaning that the funnel is more than just the prospect, but also like the resident experience and what they go through and the touch points that we have with them along that way. And then that cycle really just continues turning, hopefully with the renewal, and continue on. Data-driven insights, that is, it's just where I live. So you have to be able to understand how everything works together. Marketing, I feel like, is a big ecosystem. It's kind of like a garden. Every creature, every plant, every piece of nature plays a role in it, and marketing is very similar in that way, is that there are a lot of things that play a role in what influences people's behavior, and understanding how each thing connects with the other is pretty important, and I'd say very important. So that's where, again, I go to putting it on paper, like, here's our funnel, or here's our cycle, and here's our touch points of people along the way. What can we derive from that? What are the KPIs that we're looking for? But also, what are people thinking along these different stages of the line? And how are the things that we're putting out, our messages, our images, our flyers, our communications with reputation, how are those things affecting the buyer persona, the resident or prospect persona? And then what do we need to change from there? So I think lifecycle marketing is in multifamilies, I mean, it's the only way you can really look at it and be effective. People don't stop being customers once they're customers. You basically spend a lot of time to try to get people to be your customer, and there's a whole process for that to make them choose you over the place down the street, and then you have to take care of people and be mindful of how we are communicating and affecting their lives from there. Utilize data-driven insights to identify opportunities for improvement. Data-driven insights is my love language. I feel, for me, that everyone can have an opinion, but numbers are numbers. And so that if everyone has the same numbers, then we can all look at those in an honest way and reflect. That way we're not relying, you don't have to rely on my gut reaction to something. Now, the other side of that is one side of that is we need data that's reliable. So that takes time and effort. And then 2, what data are we including? And are we just using our property management software data, leads and leases, or are we expanding that out to include a more holistic look at the customer journey? And I think you have to take a wider look at the customer journey, the different touch points that we have with them, building resident personas or prospect personas based off that information, I think is extremely helpful in marketing, because you need to know who you're talking to. I also think that connecting the dots between common marketing metrics like impressions and clicks, and connecting those specifically to leads and leases, is something that's really important in our industry, because our CRMs don't do that. Our CRMs might show us, they're usually last touch attribution. This is the last place someone came from before they became a lead. Well, I know that someone didn't just Google apartments in Raleigh and then click on the first listing that showed up, the result that showed up, and then went to my website and filled out an application or a contact form. Like, there's a whole array of looking that goes on that we have insights to. We just got to start piecing that information together. And that's why I work hard everywhere I go to build that. There's not a tool that I've had the privilege of using that exists that can do that well. They are out there, they exist, but they usually come with a price tag, which, I mean, in my mind, I'm like, that's great. But if we're not going to utilize the tools that are available, then we should make those tools as well. Create campaigns that drive meaningful impact and optimize budget allocation. Yeah, I'll take a couple quick notes on this. I'm going to run out of my time here. Optimize budgets. I negotiate contracts for the shortest possible contract. You want our business and you're new, we're not going to do a 12-month contract. We're not going to do an 8-month contract. We want a 30-day out after 30 days, and then kind of work from there. Make sure every make sure marketing and regionals know how to watch the metrics. Hey, here's the metrics for this tool. And if they're the same as a previous tool, or it's like a new ILS we're introducing instead of geofencing or OTT commercials, both things that I introduced new into our marketing stack, then what are the metrics? How are they different? And what do you need to know? And then knowing when to stop something. You have to be able to have the metrics in place. You have to know how to read them to know if it's working or not working. So that's pretty straightforward. And then campaigns. I was the copywriter for new campaigns. When it comes to brand messaging, I did it, and then I taught it to others, that process. Again, I'm always thinking, how do we scale this so that others can do it? And so one job isn't just reliant on one person, me coming through. And then, of course, working with graphic designers to make sure that the look and the messaging created is a complete brand experience. Conduct in-depth analysis of traffic and leasing performance, ad spend effectiveness, customer sentiment, and marketing analytics. Part of this is second nature. I think when you've been in this business and you've been doing marketing for a while, that you kind of have a process, even if it's not written down, that's your way of doing things. And so my value has been in standardizing those processes and making them available to others, which basically makes it a little, hey, you want to be a marketing director someday, here's the things you have to be able to do along the way, and I'm even going to show you how to do them. And I did not have a resource like that when I was starting out. So the ability to do that is kind of neat. It feels like you're helping those who are coming up behind you, but then also it's good for the business because it makes everything easier for new employees to do and scalable and teachable. Team leadership, oversee select organizational marketing initiatives. I produce best when I'm involved in creating the marketing objectives. Assessing an overall situation and then providing practical action steps has been an advantage for me. I just have an analytical mind in that way. If I can see the whole picture, I can see where the gaps are, and I've been doing this long enough to know what we can do to fill those gaps. And I don't feel like you can really rally a team if you don't understand what you're rallying around. And if the higher ups are not in agreement of the course of action, then you'll start to kind of battle your own team as to the direction you're taking. So I like to make sure that I want to be part of the decision-making process, because then I can understand fully how that's working. And then I can make sure I communicate that message down too and get my team on board with that. Identify opportunities for process improvement and recommend strategies. Again, I've been taking unorganized companies and formalizing processes for them, filling in gaps if they need, but then not just doing it one off, but creating a process that's scalable and followable so the person who comes after me doesn't have to do that. And it's an efficient way of operating. That's why SOPs exist, right? And it's always on my mind. Whenever I'm initiating something new, I'm like, how can I scale this? How can I make this work for whomever's doing it that's not me? Because to me, everything, of course, is going to make sense a certain way. Inform and train team members on the effective use of marketing tools and technologies to enhance productivity. This is just part of something I do. Couple quick examples. How's Google Ads? We improved click performance by almost 30%, it's 29 point something. Increased the click-through rate, the number of people clicked on the ad and then clicked through to the website, and I reduced how much we paid for each one of those clicks. And that just came from understanding how Google works and then being able to teach that to the people who are operating who did not know that. And it's the answer to that is just consistency from search to ad to website. Google is looking for consistency, which they say relates to trust. Online reputation tracking, implemented processes there. Retargeting was something new, on effective use of something we weren't doing prior to me coming there. Geofencing, OTT commercials, something that we weren't using before, but implementing those into the funnel and making sure they had a spot in there. Tools like SEMrush, just to be able to understand where people are coming from. Google Search Console is probably already, I assume it's already set up for all of your properties, but that's been expanding in its breadth and its scalability of what you can get from it and how you can implement that into your marketing. So that's been a big one. And then GA4, of course. And then how do you take the information from those different tools and then your advertising resources and everything else and just make it make sense? And I think that's my biggest value, is I can make it make sense by connecting those dots that aren't there. So that was the job description. I was happy to go through it. I just wanted you to get a sense of who I was. Have a great day.